Jeff McNeil,
Here.
Andy Stitz,
Here.
Scott Jacobs,
Here.
Brad Bartholomew,
Here.
and Tony Scott. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes from December 7th? And if so, do you have any questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as they stand.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs and a second by Commissioner Stitz. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, next we will invite, So we've been given a couple options for our meetings for this year. Do we want to hold them monthly or bi-monthly like we've been doing? Any thoughts or comments?
If I may, Madam Chairman, having served on the board before we went to bi-monthly meetings and participated for years while we've had the bi-monthly, it seems since two of our major, now metropolis city incorporated areas, which where majority of the activity came from the last several years, which warranted the 2 meetings a month, and now not having that anymore, my suggestion would be go back to the 1 meeting a month. We can always have training sessions, which like we've had with Rochelle. We've set up separate training sessions and training meetings, things like that, if an option. But if it were my decision, I think going back to the 1 a month would make more sense.
Can we add a work meeting, in the same month that's the thing, without giving huge public notice? I mean, this helps the public know the whole year, here's the schedule, but if we needed to add a work meeting, if something came up, we could do that.
We can also have work meetings at sites. So, for example, one of these agenda items, if there was a warranted need, say U.S. Geological Survey, for whatever reason, say they just spontaneously said, oh yeah, we want to educate all Tooele County on water and where the water tables are here, right? We could have a work meeting on site somewhere here or outside the office that is not part of our regular scheduled public meetings.
And then is there a minimum number of meetings or often, I mean, is once a month, does that meet the code as far as how often we have to meet?
Okay.
So if we missed one because the power went out again or the air conditioning quit, what did we do? We missed the one time because something was wrong with the
Their
building.
EC.
Is it the
We
attempt
wouldn't
to-
be in violation, or we would just have to move it into a different day that month if that happened?
If there are items to be addressed. If we don't have any items, we don't have to hold a meeting. We do have to have a meeting scheduled once a month. But if there isn't any business to conduct, we can cancel the meetings.
But if there was business to conduct and for some reason we couldn't get in the building, weather-related
Then
things,
we'd reschedule it for the following week or the week
Okay.
after.
then it makes total sense to me to go to
Right.
once a month.
So I don't really have a preference one way or the other. The only thing is I'd rather subtract a meeting than add a meeting. So like if we go to 1 a month and then we decide, oh, we need an extra meeting this month and then an extra meeting this month, I'd rather just cancel meetings than add meetings, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, Brad, because if I'm we don't call them customers, if I'm a person that's coming here, got all my stuff together, give it to staff, get it approved, and I'm ready to move forward on the second week of the month, but they just had the meeting and I gotta wait a whole nother 4 weeks before I can get my CUP or get my, that's, I don't wanna delay the public if they have something, time's money in a lot of cases. So I kind of understand what Brad's saying. If we have the meeting scheduled, then we could go ahead and have one.
would also throw out
if
that
someone was ready to go.
I would also throw out that with updating the ordinances, and I agree your point, you got a valid point, but I also like to be considerate of the amount of effort that staff has to put together to put a meeting together, and also acknowledge that updating these ordinances gives staff the ability to make administrative decisions where not all decisions have to come back through us anymore.
And that was gonna be my question. Would you guys rather come every 2 weeks for a 5-minute meeting, or would you rather come once a month for an hour-long meeting?
I'd rather get it all the way out at once, but I think Commissioner McNeil has a valid point. There's no reason to, penalize the public for a delay. But again, we've had instances where we needed an additional meeting when we had the once-a-month meetings, where we just scheduled another meeting and said, let's meet, as long as there was public notice and verification.
And that-
I'm not saying we can't have an extra meeting, right, if staff warrants it, but regarding the volume that we may be facing this year, as well as,
Sure.
the amount of applications and things like that, and that staff can do more administrative approvals and things before the meetings. I can see both sides of the argument.
Well, yeah, and it gets, I don't know how,
We
I
can
don't
always-
know how it'll all shake out, but where they no longer have to deal with ERDA and Lake Point stuff, theoretically, the staff has less to do as well. Now, I understand that may be a statement where, we're giving Trish an extra job, so.
And I think you said it well, Michelle said it well. We need a schedule of meetings, but just because we only have 12 meetings a month, it doesn't mean we can't have 13 or 14, add 1 or 2 if we have special items to address.
How much notice do we have to give to schedule a meeting?
Our ordinance, we have to give 24 hours by law, depending on what it is. If it's an ordinance, it's 10 days. But our ordinance requires we notify the planning commission with the packet 7 days prior to the meeting.
Okay, so if somebody had an urgent or a reason that they're all done, they're ready for their CUP and they really, really want it now and don't wanna wait 3 weeks, we could set up a meeting with the proper notice and do that, right? That'd work for me.
Commissioner Stutz, any thoughts?
Sounds good to me. Meeting month, yeah.
Yes, fellas. Did everybody also see that comment that I made as well on instead of July 5th, which is too close to the 4th, to instead target the following Wednesday? Wednesdays work good, but if we're gonna do one meeting a month, let's try and schedule maybe, just a thought, the July one for a day. People aren't planning their vacation and everything else around, and, ooh, I gotta get home a day early, oh gee, the truck broke down, the camper broke down, kids got whatever, right?
Yeah, so
That was
if-
my other suggestion.
If you see on this stuff I suggested, the one in red is
Okay.
July 12th.
Great.
So we would change that. So it would be like your proposed is the first Wednesday of the month with that change there. So you would adopt it that way. Or you
First
could
Wednesday
do,
except July.
or you could do the third Wednesday or the second Wednesday, or it doesn't matter. But these were just a couple of dates so that you guys could just easily adopt, like, let's go adopt this one. Or if you guys wanted to do the second Wednesday, we could create a whole other calendar if you wanted. So I just did, the first one was the normal bi-monthly. The other one was the first Wednesday with that change, and then the last one was the third Wednesday, and they seem to all fit in the schedules on the third Wednesday. So it's up to you guys what you wanna do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like having it once a month, and I like it on the first, with the exception of July. I understand, scheduling it, and it's easier to cancel, and there is times when our agenda is a little heavier than others, so we'll take that into consideration too, but, right.
And if we did it the first Wednesday, then that does give somebody, if they really, really needed a meeting on the second or third Wednesday because they had a critical time, we could know about it.
We can add that meeting.
Know about it and add it for 2 weeks from then.
Okay. Any motion?
I would make a motion that we adopt the once-a-month schedule for the first Wednesday of every month, with the exception of July. Instead of July 6th or July 5th, we adopt the July 12th schedule.
I can second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the scheduled meetings for the first Wednesday of the month for 2023. The motion was made by Commissioner Jacobs and seconded by Commissioner McNeil. Let's do a roll call. Commissioner Stetz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bartholomew,
Yes.
Commissioner McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobs.
If you slip by one of these times and say Scott, I'm okay with it.
Well, I know,
It is on the placard, yes.
I had to write it down in big letters. Don't call him Scott.
We'll start this in February.
Okay,
And
and
then,
for the
Chair, you need
record-
to vote as well.
for the record, I vote yes too. Motion passes. Okay, Trish.
Just real quick, I mentioned to some of you before the meeting, we were able to update it online, but I didn't get a chance to send out an updated agenda to you guys. So our first item, the CUP 2022-173, withdrew their application. Instead of just going through an ADU process, they're just gonna remove everything out of there and just do a normal building permit with a shed. So you don't have to worry about that one.
I'm sorry, Trish, I was getting some interference here. So you're saying CUP 2022-173 is not gonna be heard tonight?
No, they withdrew the application, so they're
So
not
it
gonna,
won't be heard tonight?
no.
Thank you.
So then we'll move on to our rezone application, which is REZ 2022-193. I'll just kind of give a quick overview and then a couple of comments we got just this evening. So, our applicant, Mike Drury, wanted to rezone a portion of a property to A20. And he gave us legal descriptions and even a traffic study and everything that was required by code. And then upon further research and a notification from staff just earlier today, we were notified that this property is under litigation between the property owners. So my suggestion to you guys is just to table it for now, or maybe deny it for a while until the property owners can get whatever they need to handle.
Trish, does the litigation, and maybe this is a question for our attorney Colin, is the litigation have anything to do with the rezone or something external from the rezone? I mean, why,
So
I'm trying to understand why you would recommend to table or delay this if the external circumstance has nothing to do with
It
the
does,
application.
because
This
the
person paid a lot of
owners-
money to get this on the
Yes.
Trish, will you read the email,
Yeah.
please? It needs to be read into record.
yeah, I had it
Thank you.
here.
And I would recommend we move through the process, hold the public hearing, all of that tonight.
And table it.
Because there may be
And then-
other items that come up in the public hearing that we need to address while we're working through this. I would anticipate bringing this back in 2 weeks. We will respond to the person that she's going to read the email from and request
4
for
weeks.
more information from them
Four-
too. We'll start the one meeting a month in February.
Okay.
Okay, because of this, I don't wanna continue holding him up.
Okay.
And if I may, I don't know anything about the litigation. This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, it just
I
came in
can't help you with your question.
this afternoon.
Thank you.
That's the first time an attorney hasn't given an opinion.
I don't know anything, but what I just said will cost you $50.
He is an attorney.
Okay, so we did get an email from Tracy Gibbs. It says, it was received by Rochelle. So it says, "Hello, Rochelle. I'm reaching out via email as I was told that Mike Drury will be presenting at our meeting tonight to petition for a rezoning of the property held in the name of Grantsville Real Estate LLC. I am a co-owner of that property and the LLC, and Mike and I are in the middle of a lawsuit regarding that property. Assets removed from that property and misappropriation of assets. I am not in favor of any rezoning of the property at this time until the lawsuit is settled. If you have any questions, you can contact me direct or speak to my attorney." And then Kit Mittner is their attorney.
So question on that is the person who initiated that, and please forgive me for my temporary haziness on that, but is the person who sent that email out, is that a current owner, or is that somebody who wishes to participate after this transaction? You know how sometimes we'll have a property owner who is not the applicant is on behalf of a builder?
We do not know that. She's claiming to be a current owner, but just receiving that today, we've got to contact the state and do a bunch of work to verify that. I'm going to have her send me proof
Now,
that she's an owner.
That doesn't preclude us from hearing this because the applicant who paid the fee and is on the agenda, we can at least hear that regardless of what their status is, the chain of custody of ownership.
is there a mechanism in place that you check property ownership? So, let's just say a scenario, I come in tomorrow and say, I want to rezone this property over there, and I don't really own the property, nor am I represented by the property owner.
Yes, we do.
Is there a way to say, look up and say, oh yeah, he owns that, or he is the controlling party of a LLC or a corporation?
So the
or
property
whatever, and
ownership
is that not done?
shows, well, it shows it's owned by Grantsville Real Estate LLC. We have to pay to be able to get the information from the state to see who the partners of the LLC are.
I can do it for free.
We,
Well,
You can just look that up.
but we're going to make
My
her
question, my question
prove
wasn't
that.
to, my question wasn't to stop the proceeding.
Yeah.
It was just a curious nature to understand who the email came from versus who's on the agenda.
yeah, so like I said, this just came in right before the meeting.
So I
So
have
we
a
haven't had
question.
time to really.
Was she not
research
given advance notice that this was on the agenda?
If, we would have sent notice to Grantsville Real Estate
Okay.
LLC.
Perfect.
So whatever the mailing address is under that on our property records is
And
where
that's-
notice would have been sent.
Okay.
And that is to Mr. Drury.
Okay, great, thank you.
I halfway checked this, not knowing anything about the litigation. The property, according to the county records, is owned by Grantsville Real Estate LLC. And then I went to the state's website, I think the one you're talking about, Mr. McNeil, I can look up the name, which I did. Grantsville Real Estate LLC, is a valid LLC. It's current in its registrations with the state. And the registered agent, the person that gets the mail, so to speak,
Okay.
is Mr. Drury. But I didn't know this was gonna be an issue, extra issue, I would have gone the next step to look that up, but
So, yeah.
The partners are, I mean, that's another step.
it's,
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
it's a
real quick,
computer
it's
search and
$2
like
to
a
get the
$3 charge
information
or
on
something, so I didn't,
commerce.
had I known, I
use it
would
all
have
the
done it,
time,
but I
too.
didn't know.
Yeah, so that's why,
the time to do all of that.
yeah, so
Right,
that's why
and-
staff is just suggesting that we table it for now, until we can figure out how far of an extent we need to go into this, because we just haven't had time.
I don't know about you, Madam Chairman, but I'd rather hear the agenda item. We've done this for many applicants over the last
I would
several
recommend
years.
we
No,
hear.
I'd say let's go ahead and
I
hear it.
agree.
We've got the
It's,
applicant here, we've got material, we've got an application, we've got a fee paid.
And for me, that email is no different than a public comment period where somebody would come up and say, you can't do this because Bill promised me and I have a written thing saying yada, you know what I mean? And we've had that happen before where somebody said, remember the one where we rezoned and the schools, trust lands were in it and cows were involved and somebody said, well, the trust land said I could use that forever, and then somebody else said, well, you gotta prove that. To me, that's no
Right.
more.
Well, it's a little different than property ownership. She's claiming to have ownership in this property.
But wouldn't she have sent proof to you? I mean,
That's
if you
what
really
we
had
need.
ownership, send proof originally and say, hey, I got a deed to that property, you can't do this.
And we will require her to do that.
But for the purpose
I
of the
would think
meeting
we'd hear
tonight,
it.
that's not part
I
of
would
this
hear the
body's-
item.
That's not part of this body's responsibility.
Right, and let's turn the time over to Trish. We'll go through with it and see where this takes us.
Okay, all right, so Michael Drury is here, and he's requesting a rezone just a portion of this, property, which is currently zoned MU 40, which is a mixed use 40-acre minimum, to an A20, which is agricultural 20-acre minimum. The reason why we're requesting it to do it this way is because he does eventually want to split the property off, but because the current zoning doesn't allow him in the acreage to do so. So if he just rezones a portion of it, and he gives the legal description and stuff, and he would just take all of that and do the subdivision process right behind that, so that he can be, legal with that subdivision, with acreage and stuff, if that makes sense. So that's why he just wants to do the portion of this, so that he can just get that section out into a subdivision later on. So the subject property is it's located just south of Higley Road in unincorporated Grantsville. And the properties immediately surrounding that are MU 40. There is a section of an MG zone, and then further west of the property is another A20 zone. Our general plan, it doesn't really give a good section of this property over here, but mainly it would be like manufacturing. And then it splits down farther into an A20, so.
Just for my reference, we've had a prior agenda item on this, right? Where he was talking about making this recreational with guns, and this is the property, right? Okay.
Yeah, so there was a previous application in it to rezone it to something else, and then subdivide it, but, they withdrew it before it went to council.
Okay.
So then he's coming back through to rezone it differently, to see if it would fall a little bit more favorable, I guess. So, where was I? The general plan, so yeah, it would essentially fit into the general plan, update of 2022. And like I just mentioned, I hadn't received any neighborhood response except for today, and it does appear that we do have some public in the audience who, maybe want to speak on this item as well. The only written comments I've gotten were the ones that you just heard earlier. And then the planning staff just recommends that Tooele County Planning Commission analyzes the information provided in the staff report to ensure that the proposed rezone request will be compatible with existing residential uses and infrastructure in the surrounding area prior to making a recommendation to the Tooele County Commission. I hate to speculate too much, but I do have people contacting me on these properties that want to keep the MU40 area for like a manufacturing type thing with heavy equipment storage yard. And then the A20, we've had people reach out that they want to have a cannabis farm over there. And we just adopted a cannabis code to allow stuff like that in
Also,
agriculture.
2 months ago.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Somebody wants an additional one.
No, they changed the
On-
code, yeah.
yeah. So, just for reference, that's just how the applicants have reached out to me recently, and they're also eager to get this rezone and subdivision through so that they could also utilize these properties in those manners. So just keep that in mind. And then our concern with those is that the road, the Higley Road, and this is brought up before, is that the infrastructure of that road is fairly poor and it's really skinny and small. So if the heavy equipment operators come in, we would like to see some kind of mitigation on this rezone that would require them to beef up that road and the infrastructure there. Just to keep that in mind.
So you're proposing that the applicant remediates the road, which is not their property?
That whatever development is gonna come in, it could affect what development they wanna bring in. So we would suggest that they provide that dedication to the county, and we would go forward with those processes to see how we
Right, as
could.
far as the applicant today,
Right,
this road is not physically on their property. So you're just giving a foreshadow of if
yeah,
that's
so the
developed out.
zoning conditions, it
I'm
could
just
be
trying
on
to
the
keep this in
zoning
my mind,
condition,
what's
yeah.
the application in front of us? So that doesn't affect this gentleman right here,
It can,
today.
it can. If the intent is to put a use on the property that the road is not compatible with, that could be a condition of the rezone.
But we would only be able to put that condition on the portion of the road that fronts his property? I mean, I don't know
Right,
that we
because it's
could,
an easement, right?
ethically, we shouldn't be able to require him to figure out how to widen the road all the way down.
That doesn't make any sense to
You
me.
can, yeah, the taxpayers don't pay for development pays for development is how it's supposed to work. So if a road,
I
if,
agree, but he's not putting the road through his property, so why should he have to pay for it? I'm kind of getting the cart before
I'm
the
sure,
horse. kind of thing.
you are, well, no, I'm trying to come up with an example that I can,
Because how far down Higley Road or Burmester Road could we require him to go? We'd say, okay, we'll do this, but you've got to improve Higley Road and Burmester Road for 4
we
miles.
wouldn't determine that. A traffic study would, a traffic engineer would determine that. We would not. We're not licensed to do that, we're
But we
not
can put a
educated to do
condition on
that.
it, saying
Right.
the only way we'll do it is if you improve the road.
Based upon a traffic engineer's recommendation,
Okay, so we'd have to put that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not, none of us are licensed to do that.
And then, Trish, I have one more question. I'm not clear on the whole A20. Is he wanting us to do it A20 now? It's only 26 acres, so he could divide it into what? Because you can't divide A20 in more than 20 acres.
Right.
So then do another rezone on the A20?
No, so he would just split this portion off that he wants rezoned, that would just be.
And he can't
the
split it
zone.
off if it's zoned MU 40,
Yeah, so we.
because it's not big enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
so staff,
Sorry, I'm a
we
little
haven't
slow
found
there,
anything about that they can't do a split rezone. We actually have ordinances in our county code that address split zones specifically. And there's nothing in the state code that says that he can't do that. But, so he, in order for him to do a subdivision, he has to conform to the minimum acreage. And in order to do that, he has to rezone that portion so that he can split that off
Of the original full
of the
parcels.
original, yeah.
Now I'm with you.
Michelle, can I circle back on something here again?
You have a traffic study, but it doesn't anticipate heavy industrial use.
Yeah, but so if none of us are traffic engineers and none of us are licensed to do this, how do we forecast an unknown? In my mind, the applicant, in my mind, I see a completed application. I even see the things that the county council members prefer to see and they demand to see. When we make a recommendation, a traffic study has to be here. In my mind, a traffic study is here, so why would we suppose to be more qualified than Hales Engineering that did this traffic study and place a restriction on something they've already done? I'm trying to understand that.
They did they look at heavy equipment?
No, we've just had somebody contact us since then wanting to do a heavy equipment storage yard on the back portion of this property. That's what brought to our attention, the road may not be sufficient.
On the
for that.
remaining 48,
20, or yeah.
yeah, whatever it is,
Yeah.
40 acres-ish. But
That's
wouldn't
what
that be
brought
on
that to our
them?
attention.
When they say, when they come in to say we want to do a heavy equipment thing, wouldn't it be on them to
We would
say?
ask them to do that at the rezone stages where we have
We can ask for
much
anything.
more latitude. That's why we're
And correct me if I'm
bringing
wrong,
it
but
to you at this point.
the traffic study done by Hales doesn't take into count the proposed subdivision and the use of land, right?
Correct.
They
So-
generally don't. I've never seen one that
Right,
does that.
so,
Even the one on Church Road years ago, going through Murda didn't even do that.
We just know this is a very poor road
right.
and may not support heavy.
But we also don't know for sure if someone's gonna put a heavy equipment
That's
yard on
true,
it.
that's true. And
Correct.
we need to focus on the
That's why
applicant
it's just
before
a
us.
condition that depending on what uses may come to this property, road improvements may need to be made per a traffic engineer's recommendation. Something to that effect.
I have one last question, Trish, if I may.
You know, go ahead.
Was there any consideration, I'm looking at chapter 4, because you did whoever did a good job pulling out 4-20. That was nice. Is there a possibility when you do a split subdivision to have one zone as, say, A20 and the other one zone as, say, commercial general?
Yeah.
So you could have one that you specifically could park heavy vehicles and things on without a CUP, without any additional conditions. I mean, that's what it's designed for versus one. I'm trying to think outside the box here in a way to make sure we're being fair to the applicant as well as looking at our zoning ordinances.
Yeah, so that could be a possibility of something that would happen. We actually have those in the county right now. I don't know if we'd created them that way or if it was just like an overlay thing that happened, but that ordinance is in place to address those issues.
Thanks
So
for
it could
clarifying
be
that.
fun.
I'd wondered because I look at the county GIS map, I look at some of these legal non-conforming things, I'm like,
Yeah,
how did that get there?
yeah,
And how when an applicant comes in here to fix it and do right by the county, how do we help them fix it right? So, thank you.
Any other questions for
So,
Trish?
yes, I have a question. if it didn't get rezoned and it all remained MU 40, because that's the current zone, correct? And the person came in and said, I'm gonna put a heavy equipment yard on my MU 40 property, because that's an allowed use on MU 40. Could we force them to rebuild Burmester Road?
We would request them to do a traffic study to make recommendations as to what upgrades may need to be made to the road.
But if it's a permitted use, we would have to give them a permit, right?
They still have to go through a site plan review and all of that, and that would be part of that.
But that would be,
Doesn't matter if
But
it's.
that's a recommendation, not a, I mean, can we force them on a permitted use?
For
I can
life
see if
safe-
it was a
life
conditional use, putting that in there, but can we say, we don't care, we're not gonna allow you to have a permitted use until you do what we want?
For life safety issues, we absolutely can.
That's a stretch, but okay. Because the life safety issues do exist now. So, yeah, that's a stretch. That sounds a lot like the heavy hand of government saying, we're gonna make you rebuild this road whether you like it or not.
it does to me as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Use it how it is until it deteriorates.
right, and they may, well, and they may say, geez, I'm gonna need a good road or I'm not gonna get any customers. So they may wanna do it, I get it if they wanna do it.
Yeah, making somebody do it versus them volunteering to do it when it's not
Yeah.
even on their property.
Because if it was, let's say it was an A20 zone all around it and had a bad road like that and somebody wanted to build a house on an A20, you can do that. Well, that's a crappy road for one car.
Well, that's also your perception of the crappy road, because we've got a traffic study here that doesn't even address it, so. If I'm to rely on that professional engineer and I'm doing my job in this body, that request makes no sense to me, because I've got a licensed professional who's written this study up on behalf of the applicant and done what they're supposed to do.
Right.
So I don't foresee how I could require something that a licensed professional has provided me for, to suppose that I know more than they do.
I understand what you're saying, I agree with that.
Okay, those are my only two questions, Trish, sorry.
Any other questions for Trish?
No, but Madam Chairman, if that's okay with you, I'll move to open a public hearing.
Would you mind, before we move to public hearing, could we possibly hear from the applicant?
Oh, let's do that. He's sitting right there, might as well
I
hear
thought
from him.
we did that
He came all this way.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, eventually.
thanks.
Okay.
No, I was antsy to
learning,
help
so.
add some clarification. I appreciate that. Number one, the email that was received by Tracy Gibbs, and it's actually a male.
Oh.
His name's Tracy Gibbs, but it is a random comment. It was from a financial loan a couple years ago that was converted to equity in another company. That case is in the middle of being dismissed, and it should, I appreciate your comment, should be treated as a public comment, and if he thought he had proof otherwise, he should have emailed it or even come in person. So, everything I provided, the clean title commitment, he's not on the operating agreement, he's not on the entity, there's zero record. And I don't know why he's trying to upset this progress, but that's the backstory. But I wanted to try and make give some overview, and I know there was a lot of questions about this or that, but a couple months ago, we did get that ordinance approved for medical cannabis businesses in the county. I think that was duplicated from what's already allowed in the city. And that was a result of an interested party I have that wants to buy that front 25 acres. So the total property is 68 acres. And they wanted A20, so he said, originally we said, hey, let's carve off 20 acres with the access roads and everything. It turned out to be advantageous to have him buy another 5, so he gets his own entrance off the road. In the meantime, I had already been trying to get it rezoned to RR1, and I had a lot of pushback from the farmers. You know, they want to be a farm for the next 100 years, and they don't like, you know, people end up complaining about the cow smell and the zoo lady, and so I said, okay, what if we did a medical cannabis and forget the residential, and basically this whole area just turns into be a little business park. So the zoo lady was happy, Dennis Higley and the farmers are happy. Of course, they love farming, and that all fits with them. And so I kind of scrapped that. But in the meantime, I'd already done the traffic study with Hell's Engineering, And that was successful, and anyone who wants to test out the road, it actually is a robust road. Jerry Hurst, the previous commissioner a while back, did us a big favor, and he came, I don't know what he did, but somehow it got all filled in, and it's a solid pavement job. And the Hell's engineering report shows that it'll support 3,000 cars per day. So I called him back and says, if there's a potential buyer who also wanted to buy the back property, that's not on the table today. If they wanted to buy the back property, how could we analyze the road for that? And he said, well, it's a nice road, but all we would do is get an estimate of how many semis might come up and down. He says, is it 1 per day, 2 per day, 10 per week? What is the number? And then that just wears against the average life of that road over time. And so obviously if you bring more, then that wears it faster. If you bring less, then it makes it longer. But right now there's plenty of semis going up and down, just with the farm operation. So I talked to the potential buyer. He's waiting in the wings down the road, but he said at best it would be 2 a day. And it's basically just to bring stuff in. He has a very successful operation in West Valley City called Utah Track and Welding. And so everybody in the construction business uses him for different parts or whatnot. And so he basically would just be moving his salvage yard to that property. And then he would apply for his own CUP, get his own civil engineering, go through that whole process. He understands that. But that's if that goes through, he would want to do that. And then he would just bring the parts there, lay them in an orderly fashion, and then just be able to pick from those parts and be in a more friendly environment rather than where he's at right now. But that's just a maybe possibility. The exciting part is this front half. It's part of the property that we don't use. If we end up keeping the back, we're still remain a range, which we're happy to do that. But the front part, we got that ordinance through, and here's the exciting part. The indoor, it's about an 80,000 square foot grow facility. They use a tremendous amount of LED lights. And so his condition was, hey, can this property, is there enough electricity to support that? And I go, well, the power lines are right here, right on the side of the property. Of course, we contacted Rocky Mountain Power, and they said, no, that's not very much at all. That's just, the minimum. But I contacted Nick Jenkins of Rocky Mountain Power. I brought the report, and we did a study, or the Rocky Mountain Power did a study, and they said, hey, based on the power requirements that medical cannabis operation will require, it'll actually generate a sizable bill, a sizable power bill every month. That, working backwards and pulling some strings with Rocky Mountain Power, justifies bringing in the $4 million big boy power line to the whole area, all the way to the property, for free. So Rocky Mountain Power has agreed to bring that in for free because of the potential tenant, their power bill will be like $68,000 a month for all the grow lights. So that's going to bring a lot of good infrastructure to the area. Obviously, we don't have a water line yet, but that would be awesome. But all this is a simple rezone to get the front 25 acres to A20. It's not going to go through any other zoning. In fact, one of the conditions he wants to buy the property is to agree for 30 years that there will be no request to rezone to residential. He says, we don't want any neighbors complaining either. So it kind of just made everybody happy out there, the farmers, the zoo lady, that this is just kind of a commercial place to do business. And then that power also will help supply the industrial manufacturing company that bought the property across the street as well. They bought about 160 acres or so. So it should be a lot of positive improvement, and it's just a simple rezone to carve off 25 acres to A20. The back part stays 43 acres, which remains MU 40. And I did go ahead and I got the fire department letter, the health department letter, did the percolation test,
And then everyone signed off on the final plat map with the legal descriptions, everyone except for planning and zoning. So I kind of completed X, Y, and Z, but we still gotta, you know, show why this is good and simple as far as the business plan. So that's why I was kind of, you guys were having a lot of good questions. I wanted to get up and provide some of that clarity. So it's just simple rezone. And then I was trying to figure out, do we subdivide it first and then get it rezoned? Or, but this was Trish's, to my knowledge, this was Trish's recommendation to Jeff Miller before he left. Like, here's the different ways you can go. It made sense to me, do a split rezone, subdivide, and then we have a medical cannabis, and then have the shooting range in back. And if that makes sense to Utah Track and Welding, then they would buy it with the existing zoning, make their own CUP application, get their own civil engineering, go through that process, prove the road would be viable with another supplement to the traffic study, you know, go through that whole process. And he understands that. But that's totally separate down the road.
Any
so far?
questions?
No questions on my part.
Thank you.
No questions on my part either.
So can I make my motion now?
Yes,
Is that-
please.
Okay, good. Then I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner McNeil, a second by Commissioner Jacobs.
You know you
Open
want
the-
to say, Scott.
I was trying to open public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. We're opening public hearing. If you have comments, please come up and state your name. Let's keep them brief and we'll see where we go. Okay.
My name's Jared Higley, and my family owns all the property around this, but specifically, I own right in front of this property. And I'm just not sure how I feel about finding out on short-term notice that they want to put a medical cannabis plant in front of my house. I just don't know how that makes me feel. I don't think it's a good idea, but, you know, that's probably not for me to decide. Other concern I have is, and I'm not a traffic engineer by no means, but I am somebody that drives down that road every day on Higley Road, and that road is nowhere near wide enough to have two cars on it at one time. If two cars are passing, one has to pull off in the weeds to be able to pass another car. That's a concern of mine. I don't know, Mike said we're all happy down there about this, and I would have to say that I don't know how he figured that, because I've never told him I was happy about this rezone. Because, once again, he said we're farmers around there, and I would like it to stay farmland. Plus, the piece he's talking about putting equipment on, the back piece, floods every year of a foot or so of water on top of the ground, which I think is a big concern for anything that goes in there. They had to put a pump in to pump the water out of the rifle range just to be able to use it and not be underwater. So that's a concern of mine. The other thing is the potential buyer for putting equipment in there. I was specifically told by planning and zoning that us as farmers had to get rid of our equipment if it did not run. And I told Trish that the equipment that does not run we use it for parts for other tractors that we have that are just like that, and basically was told if it was 10 years old we had to get rid of it, which kind of bothers me now that they're talking about bringing in a tractor wrecking yard, an equipment wrecking yard, which probably wouldn't bother me if I hadn't been told basically to get rid of our equipment as farmers. So that's a few of my concerns about this rezone. I can't think of anything else right off the top of my head, but I know that if my brother was here, he'd tell you the same thing. He's not happy about this. I'm sure my dad and my uncle would, if they could be here, they would say they're not happy about it. And my dad don't even get information about this, and he borders it right on the corner of this property. So when I say I'm across the street and it's right in front of my house, they're talking about right side of my dad's house, right side of my dad's place for this medical cannabis plant they want to put in. So I think that's my concerns about this is that. Once again, I'm not an engineer, so I've just farmed it and kind of know the lay of the land for, my entire life. So, yeah, that's my concerns.
Thank you.
My name's Chris Eddington. I live on Higley Lane. I am not all for this. Medical marijuana is one thing. When you start bringing trucks in, I drove truck, there's trucks going in and out of those all the time. They're having to bring dirt in. The dirt there, they can't just use the dirt on the ground. They gotta bring special dirt in. And then you're gonna bring in high power lines, we have a cancer problem. The more power goes through lines, the more cancer's around. That's been proven multiple times. And the road just is not built for heavy truck traffic at all. So, thank y'all.
Thank you. Yes, let's hear from our online. Okay, go ahead with your comments, but first, please state your name.
Okay, my name is Terry Durfee and I live on Burmester Road. And I do want to mention, I know this is kind of more of a general item, but I think that we probably need to rethink how notification is given, because I don't think most people even knew that this was happening. And so, I mean, I only knew because I have subscriptions on the Utah Public Notice website. And that's the only reason I even knew anything about this. So I think we might want to look at how notifications are done and try to make it easier for people to know what's going on. But I'm opposed to it because I don't know who all has driven on Higley Lane, but it's not a great road at all. I've been on it just within the last week or two, and it's not a good road. It's barely drivable for someone that has a house and a car. So having semis on there a lot would be a really bad deal. And then I don't have an issue specifically with cannabis. My issue with it would only be the water usage that would require, because even though we're in a good system right now, even though we've had a good winter so far, we've been in a drought for over 20 years. And so it's going to take at least, at the very minimum, a decade of more than normal snowfall and precipitation to fix the situation we're in. So I just would be really concerned about the water consumption that the cannabis grower would take. But I don't have any issue specifically with cannabis, but it's just the fact of the amount of water that it could possibly take. So that's my only opposition. I do think that it's a better solution than having a bunch of houses, but I'm still opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from online?
I'm gonna, make some additional
We're gonna have
comments.
to wait until after public hearing is closed.
Oh, can I still be as a public person too?
Okay,
Just for clarification.
State your name and stuff.
Oh,
please.
Michael Drury.
thanks.
Yeah, just for clarification to some of the comments. Again, the potential construction salvage is just a potential. That's not on the table today. So I don't want the comments about the road. I think it's a sturdy road, and I've been there for 16 years. And I'm not trying to sell a little skinny road that doesn't comply. So the road would have to be addressed with the conditional use permit if that party's interested. That's not on the table today. Today is the rezone for the cannabis operation. With regard to the water comment, the indoor greenhouses, they are brilliant growers. They don't waste a drop of water. It gets recycled and recycled and recycled. They don't waste any water. So there's not a water issue there. We have a couple water shares and plenty of water on the property, and ability to buy more water shares and access the water. To my knowledge, the power is going to be underground, not high-powered lines. So I think it's a big development for the area. Also, even the placement of the greenhouse, the schematic they had to provide Rocky Mountain Power was all the way in the back of the middle of the property, the very edge of that drawing. It's as far as you can get off the road, and it's 25 acres, so it's all the way back. And it's just 80,000 square foot greenhouse. So I think that's a great placement. It's more property than they wanted to buy, but they also wanted to get at least 20 so they could qualify for A20 and build a responsible professional business. And the revenue it's gonna bring to the county is fantastic. That's a money-making operation, and if in fact the construction equipment recycling company is also interested, that's another big chunk of revenue, much more than any other business on that road is bringing. And that's what we're trying to promote, is responsible development with good businesses that are not residential, but I can't think of a logical reason why not, but I understand some of the comments, but I wanted to address some of those with some facts that I believe in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one in the lobby coming forward to the microphone or anybody else online, I make a motion to close public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rochelle, just for clarification, will you educate us on how meeting or agenda notifications go out?
There, 10 days before the meeting, there is a letter or notice sent to all adjoining property owners of all items that are on the agenda.
Thank you. That was my understanding. I just wanted to clarify. Anyone have any other questions?
Well, I have one comment about that. And the one public commenter mentioned it, you can go on the Utah Public Notice website and subscribe to whatever you want. You can say, I want to know what the city thing is, or the planning and zoning agenda, and it will send you a notice. It's actually very well done. Now, so for anybody that's listening that wants to know what's going on in something that they wouldn't be right next to the adjoining property owner, that's a great way to do it in today's world where electronic notifications can come out.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also on tooelecounty.org, and it's listed, the agenda and the meeting notice is listed in the local paper.
Since the paper went to predominantly online and once a week, it has not been listed
Okay.
in the paper because their deadlines don't meet
Okay,
ours, so.
It's not required under the state ombudsman's code.
Right.
2022 education covered that since most papers have gone digital, the municipalities are no longer required to post it in public print
Okay.
anymore. But they do have to comply at least with the state website only.
Yeah, and that's why they've created that public notice website the way they have, is to help with that.
The thing that I learned too, a couple of years ago, is the intent of sending the public a notification in the mail, that's ergo the intent. It's by no way the responsibility of the municipality to ensure that it gets to the applicant. So if the mail person accidentally stuffs it in somebody's mailbox by accident or gets lost in the mail, the county did its part to get it out. Also too, the 10 days notice is from the date they post it and mail it, not the 10 days that it should be there, which I never understood before I was on this body. I think that's worth mentioning for the record for anybody who's interested.
thank you for clarifying that, because I found that interesting. I misunderstood that at first too.
Now, I have a couple of questions, I think, for staff, probably for
Okay,
Trish. Help me remember when we adopted the ordinance that would allow cannabis growing facilities. I remember we went through great discussion on that. Does that only work on A20, or could they be in an M40?
As far as I understand, it would only be agricultural.
I can't
it
remember.
in
if we-
820 and MD.
MD, okay,
Yeah,
I
I believe
knew there
that
was
one
a,
with Wholesome, that was MD, wasn't it? It was only 2 months ago.
Wholesome is wanting to go on this property.
Yes.
yeah,
that's-
because at that time, all we did is
It's
adjust the
820 or
ordinance, we didn't
80.
have a property.
Oh, that's right, that's right, that's
Yeah,
right.
and that's where I could remember there were two zones, I just couldn't remember. The one was MD and the other one was A.
That's right.
So
They paid
in
the
order
fee.
for them to go on this property, it would need to be rezoned, and then they would have to come in and do their conditional use permit.
Right. And state law requires
Requires
that
municipalities
we
adopt it.
have an agricultural and an industrial zone that it's allowed in.
Right.
That came out, what, 2020, 2021, House Bill?
21.
Yeah,
I think House Bill 85.
yeah.
Yeah, anyways.
So if we didn't rezone this and they didn't go on this piece of property, or if we rezoned it and they decided not to go on it, they could apply for any A or MD zone
Correct.
as well, so.
Yes.
Which might likewise be by somebody's house or.
And that's the intent today, I guess, you know, as I've sat here on this board in whatever capacity, it's one of the hardest lessons I had to learn is we have to pay attention to the facts of what's in front of us today. We have to pay attention without our personal bias as a body to the application that has been presented to staff and is presented to us before. Now, as Rochelle's educated me over the years, you know, what can we and can we not do something unless it's an adverse reaction for CUPs, things like that. But on the rezone, she's exactly right. We can place limitations, we can place whatever we want. We could even say, I don't like it, and that's a reason, but these are the only times on a rezone, is the only time we can have a personal bias. But we need to ensure for the county council members to help them in their job afterwards, to make sure we help them as to what our reason is. Whether we make it a motion or we're not, and we can express it as an opinion or within our motion, but anyways.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So just a clarification, tonight though, we're just looking at the rezone without really what is going on the property.
That's correct. That's
So I
correct.
mean, what, the possibilities of what could be on the property are not what we're looking at, but just changing the zoning.
Yes. I mean, he's gone far and beyond what is required of him at this point, but all that we have focused on, and I have a hard time tabling this or entertaining a motion to table it without proof of ownership from the email.
There wasn't time to dig
No,
into that
I'm
in the
not
time we
saying
got
it's
it,
staff.
so.
I think the staff does a good job. Maybe Colin, I'm pretty sure he's been in the other room researching for us.
So, Chairman, what you're saying is, you think we should move forward because it's not enough, that email's not enough to say there's really a legal thing?
For
Is that-
me,
is that-
for me, that's my
okay.
opinion.
I mean,
I just want to clarify that, because that's the same for me, that's no different than, I mean, we
But
got
like
two
I said-
sides of the same story
I
here.
noticed Colin snuck out, so I'm thinking he has some some information.
I am
Sorry.
happy to provide you with information that I found in the last half hour, if you want to hear it.
Please.
All right.
Does that have bearing on the application or not?
On
It's
the
bearing
email?
on the email.
But no bearing on the applicant,
which has. a bearing
application
on-
packet is in front of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
So if you want to hear it, I'm happy to share it.
Please.
I would prefer not, if it has no bearing on the application in front of us,
It
because
does
that is our job.
100%.
I think it does to me too, because can clarify ownership and the potential.
Well, then how is that any different than a developer who comes in and fills out an application on behalf of an owner when they're not the owner?
This could,
Because it's been gone through.
this could potentially get the, I mean, in my mind, if there's a lawsuit going on, we don't want to drag the county into.
Well, that's the
into
whole
that
thing, is I'm
lawsuit.
trying to not drag the county council into this, just based on the application that's in front of us tonight.
Exactly, and that's
I
why I'd
get
like to hear it.
Okay.
Rhetoric.
I stepped out. I happen to have an account with the Utah Department of Business Regulations, so when Rochelle says she's correct and it does cost money to get the information, great, but I have an open account with them because I do this regularly. Here's the sentence in the email that I am concerned about. I am a co-owner of that property and LLC, and Mike and I are in the middle of a lawsuit regarding that property. There is a lawsuit. It's pending in Salt Lake District Court. It was filed in June of last year, filed by this Tracy Gibbs against Mike Drury and others It has nothing to do with the property. It is a lawsuit based on an alleged business loan that Mr. Drury did not repay. Moreover, according to the Department of Business Regulations, Ms. Gibbs is not an owner of the LLC. She's not a member of the LLC.
It's a he.
Sorry, Tracy, I assumed he was a she.
Yeah.
We did too.
We found
My
out that it's
bad.
a
I
he.
apologize to Mr. Gibbs, apparently Dr. Gibbs. Not an owner of the LLC, not a member of the LLC, not an officer in the LLC.
Thank you.
Okay? And I'm gonna give all this information to my good friend Rochelle for whatever reason.
Thank you for clearing that up.
I knew the attorneys would have something to say. Yeah, I'll send you a bill.
Does anyone have a recommendation for the county commission, or county council? Do you have any questions? Have we covered everything?
I think I'm ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I am too. So go ahead, Jeff. We'll see if yours agrees with mine.
I would make a motion that we give favorable recommendation to the county council for the rezone, rezone REZ 2022-193. I guess that's the end of my motion.
I would second that because I don't see any staff recommendation for provisions. And considering that the packet, in my opinion, is complete, and we are not licensed professional road engineers or water engineers or safety engineers, that is why I'm seconding your motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McNeil for a favorable recommendation to the county council, seconded by Commissioner Jacobs. Let's do roll call. Commissioner Bartholomew?
Yes.
Commissioner Stetz? Yes. I vote yes. I just want to clarify something that Mr. Drury said. He said, it's a simple rezone. And I've been here 3 years now, and I can tell you, there's never a simple rezone. I've learned that, you know? That's all I'm saying, but I agree with the favorable recommendation. Commissioner Jacobs?
I vote yes.
Commissioner McNeil?
I vote yes, again, with that explanation that it is a rezone.
Yes.
We only know what might happen in the future on it, not what could, or what could happen, not what actually will.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, I would move to the next meeting, which is make a motion to adjourn.
Second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for the public's
Does she
time.
get to sign something?
That's why you wanted out, because you can't sign right now.
You get to sign that too.
This is the guy.